should we say there's spoilers right at the start? Or?
No? I would love to be surprised by spoilers. Good evening! Hey everybody!
Hi.
How's it going? Glad you all joined us for this very, very, very happy, delightful panel. Death That Killed Me.
It's a feel-good show.
Yay! That's right.
Death That Killed Me. I guarantee that this is the greatest panel you will watch in this room during this time period.
Yes.
Get your money back.
If we haven't made at least some of you cry, we're going to be really disappointed.
Yes, there will be spoilers, but you knew that because you're coming to a panel called Death That Killed Me. All right, my name is Cisco. I'm a writer and producer. I'm here local, but I'm just the moderator. And the reason why I'm so confident this panel is going to be fantastic is because of all these wonderful people sitting to my left. I don't want to watch. I'm pretty sure that's left.
Yeah.
To my left. So we're going to jump right into it. This is a fantastic topic that has been discussed by geeks and others for generations. Now we get the official capacity to do so. So everything you hear here is gospel. It cannot be argued with. That's right, carved in titanium. But adamantium. Well, that's not real.
Vibranium.
Well, I guess titanium's not real.
Vibranium.
Yes. It's carved in nickel. The toughest substance known to you. Anyway. We'll let my prestigious members of the dais here introduce themselves, and so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Your name is really, really helpful. And then also a fictional character death that sticks with you to this day. It could be something you watched this morning, it could be something that you saw as a child, but just one that really just hasn't left you after all these years.
Should I start or you want to start again? Okay. My name is Randee Dawn. I am a journalist. I'm an entertainment journalist. I write for the LA Times and Variety, so I cover sort of the whole industry in this. I'm also an author. I have a few books at FTP Publications, FDL Publications, that's it, in the dealer's room. Although I did sell out of my novel today, so I have stickers if you want stickers. And as for the one that stuck with me, I'm just going to pick the one that we were literally just talking about up here, is when I read Black Orchid, and they just killed Black Orchid off, and Neil Gaiman's Black Orchid, and I was like, wait a minute, you did that, you did that. I was both shocked and extremely impressed at the same time.
I'm Mark Goldberg. I'm just a local fan, and I'm not even going to say the name of the character. I'm just going to say the name of the movie that it's from. The Never-Ending Story. What? Tell me, come on guys, what are we talking about here? R-Tax. And it's funny, I was talking with a client of mine recently, and he's not, really a geek or anything, but I mentioned that I was doing this panel, and that's what he brought up initially. And it's that movie and that death scarred my entire generation, basically. We can talk more about why in a second, but
my name is Renate, Fiora, she, her pronouns. My professional credentials is that I attempt pretty well to teach physics to ninth graders, and mostly successful. And a lifelong fan. I also, the first thing I thought of was R-Tax. I'm a huge Never-Ending Story fan. I've read the book multiple times. I've seen the movie multiple times, and both book and movie, it's heart-wrenching. And if you struggle with depression or anxiety at all, you see that scene, you're like, yes, I'm there with you. I know how that feels.
Well, I'm Janelle, and first of all, I sucked at physics in high school, out of all the sciences, and it makes me sad because my dad's an engineer and he is not depressed, he's disappointed in me, to say the least, when I was in school doing physics. Anyway, so I'm Janelle Kloth. Today I am also Avril Lavigne, looking for my skater boy, you guys. And let's see here, I'm an actor and performer. That's my full-time job. I just try to do the thing, y'all. Try to, shoot the shot, do my best. So yeah, I've done a lot of panels here. I don't know if anybody wants to know what else I'm up to. You can come talk to me. I had business cards, you guys, and you didn't make it in time for CONvergence. Mad about it. Anyway. Let's see, what's the death that stuck with me? Well, this one stuck with me as a child, and I never watched this movie again because of that, and I should watch it again anyways. But animals always get us, you guys. Those dang animal deaths, and Old Yeller took me out. I was like a really small child, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this ever again.
That's why they make a website that's like, where does the dog die? You just look up the movie, and if there's any animals in it, it'll tell you whether or not they die.
Renate and Janelle, I'm kind of curious, because I brought up Artax, animal death. Why do you think animal deaths affect us more than some others?
I think for this, it's okay. So there was, in a similar way, I was in Hyde Park in London, and there's a lot of World War II memorials, and there's one for all the animals that passed in the war, and it was terrible. It was like we were just crying in the middle of the park. And I think, and it's what it says on that memorial, and this is the reason why it's so hard. It was that it said that they had no choice, and the animals are there just doing their thing, or they're there because their hero brought them, and they died just because they were just hanging out with their friend.
They are innocents.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they are often used as precursors. You know, this animal will stick with this character, and it gives us, the animal dies so that we can feel something, but even though we know the hero is probably going to survive.
I mean, let's be real. First of all, everybody usually can relate to it because they have one of those animals that usually dies. And we all know that they are just, like, not as intelligent of beings. So, the fact that they're just like these simpler creatures doing their thing, watching something like that die just feels more innocent and unfair when it's like, if it's a person in the movie or whatever like that. It's usually, they can either have said things or done things and it's more reasonable, or even if they do and they're a great character, you're like, this sucks. But watching a furry thing that it just is, how can it be evil when it's just doing its thing and being there? So
I think also in the two examples that we have animals. I know this is not going to be an entirely animal death thing.
Yeah.
But in both of those examples that we had, Artax and Old Yeller, that they didn't do anything. It wasn't their fault. They weren't even like saving the hero at the time. It's like they were just on for the ride, or they're part of the family, and hey, and they're going to die. Like you can't even say they died for a cause. That makes it even harder, I think.
And for me, the Artax death was shocking. It was like, you didn't see that happen in 80s movies. It was like, coming out of nowhere, oh wait, the animal's always saved, kids are always saved.
They'll make it through something.
They'll make it through, and then it doesn't. And it was like, oh my God, okay. It was so, and then thinking about it, watching it as an adult, and thinking, okay, this creature died of depression, basically. There's a lot of layers to that. You can watch it again as a child and as an adult and get different meaning from it. But I was serious. I mean, it really did. I saw a lot of people nodding their heads there. It really did scar an entire generation because you weren't expecting it at all.
Well, keeping on the animal thing just for a bit.
Okay.
I noticed that we talked about, we have a Atreides horse, one of the heroic protagonists. We also talked about Old Yeller, who was Farmer's dog. So, two-part question. Does the animal have to be a mammal? And does it have to be part of the protagonist side of the narrative? For example, I noticed no one mentioned Cujo. No one mentions Jaws. These are animal deaths.
But justice for Bruce.
Or like the orca and orca, the grizzly and grizzly, the ants and them. Like when the animals
Wait,
are...
what about phase 4?
Well, I have watched certain movies like Orca. Okay, so big old movie Orca, and I remember more identifying with the animal than with the people, because the people are just horrible. So in some cases, that actually I will feel something about that animal, even if the animal is killing other people, and they're going to have to die. But I think that the more furry, the more close they are to having a personality, the more that likely they are to be identified with our protagonist.
I think personality is a big key.
Yeah.
Like some of the animal deaths that I'm thinking of come from Dragon Riders of Pern. Whether it's a dragon or a fire lizard, and like you've gotten to know them, you've gotten to know their personality, and then they go between usually, and it's heartbreaking.
I would, since you mentioned Dragon Riders of Pern, I'm going to bring up another movie, Dragon Slayer. Do you guys remember Dragon Slayer?
Kinda.
Well, it's really cool, and the dragon there is brutal, and it does kill people, but then you see it laying eggs, and it's just being a mother, and it's not completely evil, it's trying to do its own thing.
So that's kind of like the answer to Alien then? Just laying eggs, trying to do its own thing.
Okay. Yeah, and when Alien died, I was so sad. Man, I just want those aliens to just go.
They are very cute and cuddly.
When I first saw that
They
chest, I
get
was
right
like,
up and
so cute.
I mean, that was actually one of the deaths that did affect me. In all seriousness, was the movie Godzilla in 1985 when they lured him into the volcano. I was like, screw you guys. Like, he's just taking a walk. Your city's in the way. And I bawled for quite some time.
Yeah.
But speaking of animals, how about the two-legged type? Not just kangaroos, but like, yeah, let's get back to people. Yes, let's talk about people. So are there death scenes that you feel are, or just deaths in general, are they necessary to the plot, or for the most part, are they really just like a contrivance to help elicit emotion from the viewer, the reader? Both?
I think so. The other deaths that I was going to mention, it all happens at the same time. Again, in Dragon Riders Return, it's a trio of deaths that happen simultaneously, or like one that is cascade sort of thing. And it's the death of Master Harper Robington and his fire lizard, which was preceded by the death of the AI computer that helps them advance their culture. And so you've got a death of a non-living thing, and it's very moving and very sad because you've been with these characters for many books now. But I think, yeah, it does get you in the emotions, but I think it is very pivotal to the plot that they had to kind of say goodbye so that, and step away ultimately, so that the people could take their own move forward.
Let me rephrase the question like this.
Yeah.
Seeing the death on screen, like, is there a difference in the emotional reaction between the implied death, like a character dying off screen, versus something as visceral as like Red Wedding, where we get to see like, this is how these abortions in Westeros.
And I was actually going to mention Red Wedding or Game of Thrones because there are, I mean, we could do an entire panel with guests of Game of Thrones, to be honest with you. But I think there is a greater impact when you see it. I think it does hit harder.
Off camera is a cheat, especially if it's a main character.
Yeah, they're just trying not to do sets and budget and costumes.
But there are so many deaths that really do move the story forward. And I was, when you mentioned that, Taylor, I was really thinking of Game of Thrones, where there are so many deaths that are necessary to propel the plot forward. Ned Stark being one of the great examples of that. That doesn't happen. So many other things don't occur. And of course, that was a very, very shocking death. Everything that happened with Red Wedding. I mean, you can go through a number of other deaths, a litany of them, honestly. But that's one of the things that kind of spoke to me at first with that.
Yeah, you know, so, I mean, Martin specifically with the Song of Ice and Fire books, what was interesting about that to me is, you know, I knew that the show was going to be coming on, so I picked up the first book and didn't have any information about it. I started reading it, Ned Stark, oh, this is clearly our protagonist. It's going to be like a detective mystery. He's going to figure out who killed Robert. That's going to be the whole book, and then he dies. And it's not just that that's shocking. It's not just that it's like a psycho for our generation. Wait a minute, the main character has been killed. But what that does is it pulls the rug out from under you as the reader or as the viewer later on when you watch it, and tells you that you can expect nothing. You might think you know the tropes. We're going to play with those tropes. You do not know who's going to die. Everybody, anybody could die. And I think that's a brilliant use. It's not just a shock tactic. It's explaining to you that we will go there and we will stay there. And that's true throughout the entire series. Some of the people who ought to die don't die, and some of the people who shouldn't die die. And that's one of the
They
brilliant
die at the right times, and then it's amazing, like Joffrey.
Like Joffrey.
Oh, I'll say Ramsay Bolton.
But even that one is almost derailed because immediately Tyrion is accused wrongly, and we almost veer away from the joy of seeing a young kid who's just been crowned king and gotten married, brutally murdered.
I guess that's why Game of Thrones is so good at they've been subverting expectations, and that's why the show will win.
Exactly.
Well, so just to throw this out there, so this is off genre. Like, there's a beautiful adaptation of Mice and Men, starring Gary Sinise and John Malkovich, and you don't get to see like the bullet enter his head and come out the other side. He's just like, look for the rabbits, and he's like looking at the rabbits, like, I see them, and then the camera pans away and you hear the gunshot. That sucked. That was so painful. Or what I think is one of the saddest deaths in science fiction was Holdo in Last Jedi, hashtag second greatest Star Wars
yes.
movie. Like, we don't see her obliterated. We just see her like use the ship as the world's greatest like jutsu knife.
You know what, Taylor? This is why I think though, because you had enough build up though. You had enough build up for those deaths that happen off screen. It's the ones where you're like, where there's a character that comes in, they're like, oh yeah, so and so like died or this thing happened, and you're like, okay, well we what? Like this
Right.
was a build up, and then literally like 10 seconds later, you're away from them and they die. So it's not like it's a full like episode later or a full like half an hour later where someone just randomly is like, yeah, they're dead now or something. So I think that's what we're gonna do.
That being said, and this is complicated by the real life death, but the death of T'Challa at the beginning of the second Black Panther movie was traumatizing, and just their mourning of him.
But I thought they handled it beautifully.
They did.
I was shocked at how well it was done with that.
And it takes up a relatively large chunk of the movie.
It does.
But it's totally warranted. And the thing is, that's a unique example too, because we know the actor has passed on, and we have our own feelings about that and that particular loss. And then, I mean, for me, when I'm watching the movie, I'm seeing the character's dead, we're seeing the funeral, I'm thinking the actor, and I'm thinking, during the first movie, he was suffering with this horrible cancer and still doing an amazing role. Like all of that played together as I was watching that movie.
Taylor, I want to talk about deaths on screen also, because I was thinking of The Last of Us. And in The Last of Us, with the episode with, I'm sorry, I still think...
Marie Bartlett and Nick Offerman.
Yeah, that's what I think of the math, honestly. You don't see their deaths, and yet it is so impactful. It is beautiful and impactful, and you don't need to, because everything is done before that. You know why they're doing it, you see their love, you see everything, and their death is obviously very clear, but do we need to see it? I don't think we do.
Well, there's nothing to see. Like they poisoned themselves. They're going to get in bed and they're going to fall asleep. It's like the couple on the Titanic, right? Like you can kind of picture it.
Oh, I'm sorry. But that's like, okay, you did it. You did all the work in advance. You knew what was happening. You don't need to see that final sequence. It's unnecessary.
Well, there's been a common thread through all the discussion on this particular question, which leads perfectly to the next question. But the performances, like the reason why this build-up was so great seems to be the performances. So are there instances where there was a character or characters which you were maybe lukewarm on or maybe disliked, but the performance they gave in their final moments kind of turned that around for you, or made you kind of see it like a different light? Like, oh, maybe they weren't the 5 out of 10. Like, I underestimated. Any examples of that?
I still love it that you brought up Holdo. Sorry, I'm like I had her on my list. I like hated her for a while, and then I did it first. She was annoying, but then when she died, I was like, oh, she's good. Anyway,
I'm still starting with the second best Star Wars.
Well, after Rogue One, which nothing touches Rogue One. That's for a different panel.
I think our list of what the deaths that we came up with, I think I wrote the entirety of Rogue One.
Yeah. And we knew it was gonna happen. Dang it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's answer the questions.
Yes, performances that really did it for you. Like again, character that maybe you're lukewarm about or didn't or disliked, but because the performance the actor delivered in their final moments on screen, or in the case of Chadwick Boseman, just period. Did that elevate or change your opinions of the character or your connection to the show or the story?
I'm actually thinking of one, because that's one we hadn't talked about in advance, but I'm thinking of Game of Thrones. Sarah Wayne Callis' character, who I couldn't stand her for the first couple seasons. And then at
Who
the
did she play again?
She was Rick's wife. The
Oh,
one who died when she was pregnant.
Right, okay.
But she did a great job at the very, very end. I couldn't stand that character at all. I was like, seriously, just really? You cheated on your husband with him? Okay, whatever. But at the end, when she had to basically kind of sacrifice her life for her child and had to have her son kind of help, that was beautiful. That was one example I can think of someone who really came through right at the very end.
Nothing is sticking to me right offhand. You guys got anything?
Yeah, that's tough because there's like so many good acting performances of people who have died that deserve to die, and like I was like they were such a good villain that I actually hated them so much.
Who would you put in that?
Well, I was gonna say Ramsay Bolton for sure. I loved that character. I loved how he portrayed that. I loved that character. I really did. When he died, it was so satisfying, but it was because the performance was so good, and I was like, yeah, man, this is great. Also, I mean. I'm just a big Harry Potter fan, so like Voldemort, man. He died, but I just loved his portrayal of the character. Just each movie, I feel like got better and better and better.
But is the question like this is a character that you didn't have a whole lot of emotional and
Right.
Oh, whoops! Did I totally flip that wrong?
No, it's cool. I think I don't have a good
Well,
answer.
we can sit in there because that was a terrible question, and I retract it.
My bad. I think I flipped it
It's a
over.
better question, like. does
Taylor,
the
your questions
performance-
are too in depth for me. I need just who died? What did you think?
But like, does the performance Like, if the performance is not good, does that take you out of it, or does the story, like, make it work anyway?
Well, I think you have to care about the character on some level, right? So you can either sit there and care that they're really terrible, and then they die, and you maybe have the reaction of, wow, I suddenly feel very different about this. Something like that does not initially hit me, but I think that in order for that death to really stick and resonate and all that, it needs to be somebody you've been paying attention to and really liked, even if they were like a villainous character.
And I think Ramsey Bolton's an excellent example of that.
Right. To go off of to color outside the lines for a second here, in terms of a non-genre character. So I'm a huge fan of The Wire, and when Omar died, Michael Williams, Omar's coming. I mean, he was amazing in that role. He was not a good guy. He was a messed up guy. He was kind of had a vengeance thing going, which I liked. But when they killed him, I'm like, no, you can't get rid of him. I had a real problem with that. So that's an example for me.
Yeah, I'm at a loss. I don't know. I can't think of one. Maybe it'll come to me like in 20 minutes.
That's good.
And then I'll just randomly bring it back around.
Here's a fun one. This is lighten things up a bit, because it's getting kind of heavy on the start with that.
What, death?
This is too much. But which to you feels better as the viewer, the reader? To see the satisfying death of a character that you just hate, or like the emotional weight from an unexpected death, like just the enrichment, like holy shit, I did not see that coming. This is such a great story. So it's the excitement for an unexpected story versus the satisfaction of like, goddamn right, you get what you deserve.
I've always liked the catharsis of the character that you don't expect to die, or just and like the tears and the experience of losing this person that you loved. That's always been more impactful for me than oh my god, finally he's dead.
And I think there was a catharsis factor. I mean, to stick with Game of Thrones and move away from Ramsay, the death of Tywin Lannister. Mm-hmm. You were expecting, at least I was, expecting that guy to get away with everything. I mean, he was one of the, yes, Tyrion's supposedly the smartest guy in the realm until season 8, which we'll talk about. But, Tywin was so smart and so good right from the start. And for him to face the death that he did, it was shocking to me. And, I was not expecting it, and it was a catharsis, yes, okay, good.
I have to confess that I often don't get the same catharsis from a really evil character's death as I might want, because it's fast most of the time. I want it to linger. I want it to be as painful to them as it was to all of the people that they ruined all of these times. And instead it's like, oh, he's dead. All right, now we gotta move on. I'm like, no, I need more catharsis here. So for me personally, when somebody who I have loved or who I feel has real importance in the role, either dies suddenly or dies, okay, you can see this being telegraphed, we know something's going to go out here. That will hit me harder, definitely, because I have put my emotions into this person in a positive way, and then they get taken from me, as opposed to, all right, here, you hate this person, now we're just going to get rid of them. I don't know, for me, that's how that works.
That's a great point, because I was about to ask, if it is a satisfactory death, does the manner of the death kind of cheapen or enhance it? So you take back to Game of Thrones, Cersei Lannister. Cersei getting her comeuppance wasn't necessarily what a lot of folks thought.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, we don't want to need to focus on Game of Thrones.
Or back to the lesser franchise in Star Wars, like the way that Anakin died in Episode 6. That was...
I'm sorry, I have to let this one out. So Disney especially does this. Nobody dies on screen practically. I know we're talking about that again, but all these people who are very evil, the way they die is they fall off of something.
What do you mean, Mufasa?
And I have to say, there's a couple in Star Wars that do that too. And it's I know kids may be watching and do not necessarily want to traumatize them the way that perhaps Artax challenged us all. We don't need to see total gore, but it's so cheap. And fight. Oh, we're going up a hill. Fight. Oh, someone's going to fall off, and that's the end. Yeah. Enough with that. I've seen that enough.
Do you know why Disney does that? This is not official, but when Disney does show death, they're the most sadistic, horrifying, like Ursula. Yeah. All she did was make a young lady sign a contract underage. Right? So then she got stabbed in the chest, electrocuted, And then I was like, what the hell? Or in Tarzan, the hunter whose job is to hunt things, sees a feral man who has stolen an English woman. He's hung, stabbed, beaten. It's like, whoa, okay, does he drop him off the cliff? That's way...
Back to the cliff. Back to the cliff now.
Wow, good.
Yeah, Disney deaths are fun because there's that beautiful run where they decided they need to get rid of the parents.
Yeah.
And so immediately, like Anna and Elsa, the Queen and King, sorry, spoilers for the Frozen franchise.
Seriously,
You can't do that. Not Frozen.
But you know, Frozen fans are serious.
Yeah.
Oh, as opposed to Game of Thrones fans?
I don't know. That's a good panel too. Like Arendelle versus Westeros.
Yeah, let's have fandoms fight each other to the death.
I'm definitely Team Elsa. But speaking of character deaths that didn't come at the end of the movie, does the way that the deaths are handled among the living characters, does that have an impact on you as well? Like, do you mourn with them? Do you celebrate with them? Do you sometimes just, if it's a zombie series, just stop giving a shit after 5 minutes?
I think the way the other characters react to the death can be more impactful. You can be like, oh my gosh, the death happened, and then you watch everyone be really, really broken up about it.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh, that is the empathy of relating to your fellow living human that gets you more than anything else.
Ron, I want to follow up on that one because one of the most impactful deaths for me of all time is Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the body, and the death of Joyce Summers. So, personal bit about me, my mom died 13 and a half years ago. I've talked about Buffy here at the con several times. I've watched the entire series multiple times through. I've only watched the body once since she died, and I literally was curled up on the sofa with my knees against my chest. The body is probably, in my mind, the best example of grief and dealing with grief and how you process that I've ever seen on television. And when you see the impact of death, that is honestly what I flash back to.
That's super interesting because I agree. Like seeing like when so obviously like looking at this panel, I know I'm a bit younger than everybody here, so my references are a lot different usually. But I'm going back to Harry Potter because that's what I'm obsessed. I know too much about. But like when Dobby dies, and everybody you can see Harry, you can see everybody like seeing everybody like really be affected by it. Obviously, is going to make us sit there and be affected by it more. We're not going to be like, okay, time to move on. Like hurry up. But in contrary to that, like that made me even more sad for Dobby. But in contrary to that, I just recently rewatched The Hunger Games, and but the thing is it's not Rue. It's when Finnick dies in Mockingjay Part 2. I was like, we just walked by that so quickly. I was literally crying about. I forgot it happened. First of all, I rewatched it like last month. Forgot it happened, and I couldn't believe like. He just did all this fighting, all this work, getting all these like skinwalker things off, and obviously Katniss realizes what she has to do, and like he's gonna sacrifice himself. But I was like, she left. They're just running away again. It's like gone. We don't talk about him like ever again. And I was like, wow. I'm sitting here bawling. I paused and I'm like having to sit there and cry for a while. And I feel like that like those are kind of things. I'm like I know we're in a rush, but like damn, if there only was a little bit more for a big character like that. I needed like a little more of the rest of the in-house movie characters to feel something.
You know, you mentioning Hunger Games reminds me of there are some times where, so one of the things that will annoy me when a character dies in a movie is when when saving that character or protecting that character is the catalyst for the movie. Go back to Hunger Games.
Yeah.
The fact that Prue dies at the end, I'm like, why are we here?
Yeah.
Because why don't we just send her off to begin with? The saving of Prue to me is critical for that series to work, and it doesn't happen. Cabin in the Woods. Not Cabin in the Woods. I'm sorry. A Knock at the Cabin Door. Paul Tremblay's book, and then Shyamalan's movie. In the book, the little girl does not survive.
Okay.
And I'm like, why are we even here? Like, this is the whole point of. I'm not saying only little kids can't die in books and things. I get that that's necessary, but if you have set up your story so that this is the reason that all of this stuff now happens, Katniss goes to the Hunger Games because she's done it, and then at the end of the book, you kill that character. You've let all the air out of the room, in my opinion.
I wanted to ask you, as a writer, so in Buffy, going back to that one, the character of Joyce Summers, we thought we had saved her. We thought that she had kind of recovered from her injury and then died spontaneously. it was almost like a fake out and then it hits you. Do you feel that something like that affects more? Is that more effective? Is that less effective to have that kind of like, well, we thought it was going to go one way and then there was the U-turn there? As a
I mean, I think that works because it works. It's a relatively short time period. You know, if Buffy's first episode had Mom being injured in some way, and we're like, no, we saved her. All this stuff has been, and by the way, you cannot become a Slayer if you don't save her. You saved her, and then 20 episodes or 2 seasons or 4 seasons down the road, she just drops over. That's going to feel a little bit like a cheat. But TV series are also
because it was too far removed time.
I personally, yeah, I think so. It's not that you can't have a character who's been injured and then later dies. I think the great case with Joyce is that the show is fortunate in that for whatever reason they're getting rid of the actor. The actor is leaving. The actor has to go. Whatever, and they're able to give her a proper exit, as opposed to she just left one day or it takes 5 seconds and that's the end of it. You actually can play this note, and that makes it much more important. So to me, that's a great episode because they were able to do that. You can't always do that in TV shows. Actors leave, they get fired.
Recast.
Showrunners get fired. You know, so it really depends. But I like when they're able to actually treat a character like they're supposed to be treated as opposed to say Finnick.
Yeah.
Well, there's been quite a few hands popping in the audience, and I promise I will get to you all, but really quick. We've been talking about these great performances and these great deaths. Are there any moments that stick out to you where it was played up, you could tell from the way the writing was, you could tell from the music in the film or the TV series that this was supposed to be like a big moment and you just couldn't care less? You're like, oh, I suppose. So deaths that didn't kill you so much as like mildly interrupted your day.
That's tough.
I'm going to go with a comic example. So Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comic, had a lot of deaths, including some that really did affect me. But for whatever reason, Flash's death in that didn't affect me. In part because you'd seen him kind of bouncing around through time at various points, and they really had set it up like we knew he was going to die right from the start. So that when it actually happened, it was like, okay, we kind of knew this was happening, so it been softened a little bit. That's one that kind of jumps to my mind. I mean, there was other deaths in Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comic, that really were effective, but that one wasn't as much for me.
I don't mean to like talk over you.
I can't think of it.
I'm trying to think of one, honestly, because the problem is usually those are characters that die that are not the main characters. So they're like I'm thinking of like, I was just doing the Stranger Things panel, and so like Eddie in season 4, he dies. People were sad about that, but you also, I think, were not expecting it because he wasn't a main character. So you're like, I'm sad, but I'm also like, well, if they're gonna kill someone, it made sense that they killed this new character from this season. So I feel like I can't think of many main ones that I'm like, I didn't care.
While you were talking, I just thought of one, like the death of somebody, and it happens twice. And in the movie series, and I'm sorry, Taylor, you're gonna be upset about this, but I find the death of Wonder Woman's love interest useless both times.
I got it. How could you? We were friends.
I know, I'm sorry.
I wrote Steve Trevor as a death that makes me sad. I love that. Oh my gosh.
I saw it coming, and I didn't care when it happened. It just seemed like another fridge to me, and I was like, oh, all right.
But Edda's death, which was off screen between movies for no reason, that was painful. But as far as main characters, I think one of the biggest ones probably would be, like universally, would be that the Capulet boy in the Montague, the Romeo and Juliet. Like, did anyone really get upset that this 24-year-old like predator and his 12-year-old victim killed themselves? Read it again. Again, Juliet's a baby. She's barely out of middle school. Romeo is like almost 30, and he just broke up with Rosalind. He's like, it's okay. I see that her prepubescent cousin's available. So no sympathy.
Well, that is a more modern reading of what has traditionally been considered a romance, and it's not. I get it, it's not. But yeah, that's been, you know, the fact that we say Romeo and Juliet. I mean, go back to Baz Luhrmann's take on things. You know, even recently it was very much romanticized.
Honestly, in R&J, I think Mercutio is a harder death to take than the main characters.
Well, he was also such a great character.
Right.
Well, can we talk about Wonder Woman again? Listen, I just need to say one thing, okay? Listen, Steve Trevor Yes, he died twice. But what got me is because of how it affected Wonder Woman, that's what made me sad. I knew he was could sacrifice himself, and I love Chris Pine, but listen, Wonder Woman 1984, I know everybody's in love, but when she has to leave Steve again to get her powers back, and she says her goodbye to him, I bawled like a baby because of what she was going through, so depressed and lonely, and how she just felt so out of place from where she was, and Steve was the only thing that made her feel great and good while she had him, and having that thing back made her have a sense of normalcy again. Anyway, it's not a Wonder Woman panel, I'm sorry. But
Everyone changes the Wonder Woman panel. But yes, let's open up.
me and Taylor are here, yeah.
We'll open up for questions, and then I'll bring the mic around that way everyone can hear.
Thank you.
Oh, smarty pants.
Yeah, it's like Donahue, or
Yeah, Donahue. I like Donahue.
what's the Janelle Donahue?
Montague Captain?
No, Donahue. He looked.
I feel like we're on a
He
talk
was like a
show
sexy
now.
Johnny Carson.
Me?
Maury, yes,
Yes.
Maury
You
show.
look like Maury, yeah, like Maury, but not.
Morrissey? The
Less
man.
maternity
No,
test.
Maury, you're too young.
Yes.
Van Morrison.
Like Van Morrison.
I'm just
He is not the father.
He's no, he's just.
So like we've been talking
Yes.
about this panel for a couple of days and I was trying to prepare for it, so I really have to narrow down my question. Mark, you and I are gonna talk Game of Thrones when I've got a couple for you, but
Yes, love it.
okay, I wanna ask you guys about the power of music during a death. So two examples I can think of off the top of my head. When Gandalf falls in the darkness, and I hate this movie, but the scene, The Mist, not the book,
Oh my
but
God.
the movie.
You mean the last
When the
sequence?
Dead Can Dance starts playing in the background, and it's just like, you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, what just happened? It's the music that just rips your heart out. Can you guys think of any examples where a death happens, but the music in it just really does that final rip?
You mentioned the one that came to mind initially when you talked about that Howard Shore score.
Yeah.
Is just so incredible. For Gandalf's death, for Boromir's death, I mean, it is so evocative. That's the one that really jumps to my mind, honestly.
I'm sure that I know exactly what you're talking about, and I cannot come up with any good examples. But yeah, I mean, the music can really, it doesn't need, you don't want it to be too obtrusive. You don't want them to hit like the pop song that talks about, and then he died, and then he died, and then, you know, it's.
What pop song are you talking about?
I could make that one up. More code.
Teenage suicide, don't do it.
But, you know, like, you don't want it to be telegraphed. But if you get a good song and a character is dying or whatever, that will stick with you in a way that others won't. You know, this is not a great example, but I'm just going to think of his death. And of course, we don't know that he died, but the very last scene of Tony Soprano in The Sopranos, like, we don't see him die. We're pretty sure he died. You don't know. But the song that's playing is Journey's Don't Stop Believing. And the last thing you hear is them go, don't stop. That's the whole series.
Love
That's
it.
why.
That's a great thing.
That's a great use of music with a scene that isn't likely a death
Good
scene.
example.
And, I guess I'm gonna just quickly say when Han Solo dies in Star Wars and Kylo kills him, that the score that was playing under that definitely hit me more.
For some reason, I thought you were going to mention Wonder Woman 1984 again.
Okay, so in Wonder Woman 1984, let me tell you every single score in that exact movie. Don't open that. It's gonna be worse.
Mine might be a bit of a deep cut, but has anyone in the room seen Last of the Summer Wine?
No.
No, sorry.
It is.
I've seen a couple of episodes, but
And your band.
I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
It was the longest running live action sitcom ever. It ran for 37 years, but the premise of the show is that it's three old retired guys like puttering around a village in rural Yorkshire getting into
Golden Girls with Men?
That'd be Golden Boys.
a bit.
Okay.
There's more. We've just cobbled together this go-kart out of a bathtub and we're gonna send it downhill. But they use older actors, and they never expected the show to go as long as it did. So every time that an actor died, like the character would die with them.
Yeah.
And so for me, like the saddest moment, like in television, is the episode where the character Campo dies, and he's been like one of the main characters for 20 seasons. So like suddenly he's gone, and everyone's dealing with that. So
Got 30 seasons to catch up with that on everybody. That's starting now.
Yeah, but the British TV show, so each season's like 4 episodes.
It's like 4 episodes. Yeah.
So the question of what music cue paired with the death kills you the most, I've literally just watched the final, not literally, but just like a month ago probably, watched the final episode of A Million Little Pieces. And the music cue, it's the not the main guy, because the main guy committed suicide. Very sad, but this is the very last episode, and the main comic relief, which is James Renate, if you know him from Psych, that character has terminal cancer, and they decide to use the Wicked song for good.
Oh.
And talk about ripping your heart out.
That's a good one.
You hear like the first few little notes of it, and any musical nerd is like, oh, you did not just do that.
Yeah.
And they play like a good chunk of the song through the end of the death. Wrecked me.
Faux show. Good old Wicked always making us cry.
Right?
You know, Wicked has brunette actors, just like that movie Wonder Woman 1984.
Okay, so Wonder Woman 1984 Gal Gadot is a babe.
I'm sorry I started all this, everyone.
It is not bad.
I'll give you 3. X-Files, Beyond the Sea. Okay?
Yep, that was amazing.
I cannot possibly let this panel go by without talking about the meditation on grief and death and dying that is Pixar's Up.
Okay. There's a music one for you. That
The
music.
first,
Holy crap.
10 minutes of that movie
Yep, it's first 9, 10
is a
minutes.
storytelling masterclass.
I won't watch that again, I'm
And it
sorry.
is a slayer.
Oh, it is.
I'll fast forward the beginning.
It is.
I'll never watch that with your dad.
And third, and most recently, is the anime that just finished its first season, Oshi no Ko. Go into it unspoiled, if you possibly can. But it is excellent, it is amazing, it is something to behold. The psychology of the characters is amazingly real.
Yeah.
And the first episode ends after an hour-and-a-half movie with an amazing scene. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Where can it be
Let
seen?
go. Excuse me?
Where can it be seen?
Oshi no Ko just finished streaming its first season on High Dive.
Hideout, okay.
But Up, oh man, Up is just, that first 9, 10 minutes just hits you
Yeah,
so
dude.
Oh, yeah.
just
Pixar, man, they be nailing it. You know, Inside Out, they did that to me too. I was crying in the theater.
Big Bond.
Yup. No.
Fly me to the moon.
Well, I have the most unusual character death to
Yes.
talk about. And it's something that people have been making fun of all weekend that you're not supposed to mention, and that's artificial intelligence. When I was a child, I read a lot of science fiction. I was my own one-person nerd culture. I didn't know any other nerds, but at least 1 or 2, 3 books a week. And I love Robert Heinlein. You guys are, most of you too young to have ever read it.
Hardly, but yes.
What do you mean? I'm expert.
And I'm pretty sure that the book was called The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
I know it well,
And
yes.
that book was so good that 50 years later, I find my friends, and when we're talking together or playing gaming or something, somebody will make a quote from The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. That's how it affected people. And there was a character in the book called Mike, and Mike was a computer that came alive, that developed a personality. It was I guess the main character of the book.
No, Manny was the main character.
Well, the human?
Yes.
Well, all right, we can argue about that. Manny was Mike's friend, Mike's human friend. And Mike sacrificed himself at the end of the movie to save his people. And I didn't cry or anything, but it tore my heart out. And I really, really remember the death of this artificial intelligence.
Can you identify why did it affect you? Was it because it was shocking, because you had an emotional investment? Why did it affect you for 50 years later? I'm just curious.
Because he was such a personable, likable, he was so likable, he was a great person.
And his death was
and
unfair, or?
I was in love with the character, and I certainly didn't expect it to die.
You make me think of another classic AI example, HAL in 2001, right? So like he goes insane. That's basically what happens. Is an AI who goes insane, somebody dies and you have to terminate. You know, there's nothing else you can do. But he's pleading for his life as he goes. And that's very affecting in that movie.
Like Smart House from the Disney Channel.
Like Steve Trevor. Sorry.
Thank you, someone got that again. Smart House is about an AI house that goes crazy.
Have you ever had that moment where you're watching a show and you're like, oh, this character stuff is so impactful, so perfect for the story, and then 5 minutes later you're like, oh right, he actually survives.
Oh yes. Oh, do not get me started. I'm sorry. I know there was a lot of love for the Marvel DC cinematic universe in the world. I am really annoyed that there's no emotional investment in the deaths of actual characters. There was no point in killing off a character to bring him back 5 minutes later or even a year later. I'm sorry. I know that's
Oh,
how
for the
comics do
multiverse
it.
stuff, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, come on. If they're dead, fine. You know, use that moment to really give us an emotional impact. But once
Like
you've done that
Guardians
more
3.
than once,
I haven't seen that.
you know, once you do that more than once, I no longer care. Like, I am no longer caring that you're killing off this character. Why should I? You're just going to bring him back in 5 days.
And Randee and I were talking about this a little bit right at the start of the panel, before the panel began, because one of the deaths that really affected me a lot as a kid was the death of Jean Grey, X-Men 137. I mean, it really affected me. And then she's brought back like 6 years later. And then she dies again. And then you know, the first death really hit hard. And again, because you weren't expecting it, you thought that eventually people will, it's comics, you know, people die, but then you're brought back. But they did for quite a while. And there's only a couple of examples in comics where people let them be dead for a long period of time. Bucky was dead for, 30, 40 years before they finally brought him back as Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I think if you go through an entire generation where somebody is no longer alive, you can get a second chance. But, come on, all the reboots and everything.
It becomes too much.
How many times does Uncle Ben have to die?
Now I've learned my lesson from the Wonder Woman thing, and I'm not going to mention which show I'm talking about, because I'll know I'll just get in trouble again. But there's a very popular character, and one of my favorite characters in this series, and I think he's died 3 or 4 times now, and they keep bringing him back, and they keep bringing him back, and you're like, it's just, he had really important deaths, and now they're just cheapened.
Mm-hmm. That's a good word for it, yes, cheapened.
Yeah, I feel like, just real quick, similarly, but kind of with in the Marvel thing, it's like how in Endgame, Black Widow dying was such a big thing. Her and Hawkeye were battling to the end, and you were like, I don't want either of them to die. That was amazing. Endgame obviously is an amazing movie in general. But then having the Black Widow movie come out after that, I was like, well, now we're just watching Scarlet do her thing, and it's really fun in the caper. Obviously, Marvel knows they effed up by not having a Black Widow movie way earlier when she should have had her own movie, and they tried to make up time because they were like, oh yes, people want female-led movies because of Wonder Woman. Anyway, so yeah, that's called tying it back to what I want to talk about. Anyway, that one kind of was like, oh, well, there she is doing more fun stuff. Yeah.
In the paper comic books, dying is just one of the things
Someone in the back.
characters do.
That's right. So sorry. There's someone in the back had a question. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I thought of 2 things while we've been sitting here. One you've already addressed, is Joyce Summers' biggest gut punch ever, made more personal because my mother-in-law died in pretty much the exact same way. So like it was very hard episode. But really, the second thing, if that's the gut punch, I was thinking about like what's the brain punch? What's the death that happens that you maybe weren't that emotionally invested in, but it told you a lot about the world that you were watching. And I thought about the movie Children of Men. So Children of Men, it's post-apocalyptic, it's high concept. Michael Caine's wife's character is deep in dementia. She's not connected to the world. He's just caring for her. The whole world is going to end. Humanity's going to end in 1 generation, and he's still taking care of her. And he's got this home suicide kit, and they never explain what it is. You just see it there. It's called Quietus, and when he knows that bad guys are about to show up, he just does it, and then he goes out and he dies too. And it's just one of those, like, you never got invested in their character, but it tells you everything you need to know about that world that they're living in, and I thought that was a really great movie.
It makes me think also of Neville Shoots on the Beach. So if you haven't read this or seen this movie, there's been a nuclear apocalypse, and all of the radiation cloud is coming to Australia. Everything takes place in Australia. So they know that this is coming. and the cloud is coming. And you can laugh or argue at the whole idea of the government issuing a suicide pill to everybody. But basically, that's what it is. Everybody's got a suicide pill in their cabinet, and you watch like the last weeks of various characters and how they live out their last weeks, and then do or do not decide to take this pill. And the whole book is that. That's the book basically, and it's that just you talk about gut punch. That just is an ongoing 200-page gut punch.
It is a movie also. I have seen the movie, and it is a dark and it's a well done movie, but it is. If you're in a good mood, you ain't gonna watch it. It's dark.
Yeah.
Okay. So one that I thought was really well done was in Ophelia, which is a retelling of Hamlet from Ophelia's point of view. And they subvert it with Ophelia not actually dying. She comes back because she had taken a potion that had slowed her heartbeat enough that they had buried her. Yeah. Anyways, but
Go Ophelia.
yeah, the final scene before the very end is Hamlet realizing she's still alive, but still choosing to go on and kill his uncle. And there's this whole bloodbath, but it's still very emotional. You know he's going to die, and you know that he has chosen this over her. And then the King of Norway shows up and kills all of them, but still really good.
Yeah.
Cool. Also, your hot girl looks awesome.
Thank you.
That is a bomb class one. I was like, a hot girl? No one goes, hot girl, that's great.
I want to riff off of the deaths that were cheapened because you know they weren't going to stick, and talk about deaths that didn't stick and are still super effective.
Okay.
Like an example, it's spoilers for the Locked Tomb books. I'm just gonna say it's a lesbian romance, so you know somebody's going to die, and it's about necromancers, so you know deaths don't stick. But a prominent character dies and ultimately does not, you know, that is not the end of her that is not the end of her participation in the plot and in the events. But the second book is such a brutal journey of grief that it's still, even though the character comes back, it's still, and you suspect it will happen. It's still just so moving and so affecting.
Well, I'm thinking when you talk about the characters that died and came back and didn't really cheapen it, Lock and Key, the graphic novels, where the young boy dies and then does come back, but they set it up. They set it up well, and you saw it's like, okay, he dies, but there's probably going to be a way back with it where you're looking at the various keys and the ghosts. Okay, I can see that. I didn't feel that was cheap. I saw Taylor kind of nodding his head there. Like, it doesn't, you can make it work if the writer looks at it in a logical way and says, okay, I see the path here. It's been laid out. There's a reason behind it within that universe, so it doesn't feel cheap, like Jean Grey being, oh, that wasn't Jean Grey, it was the Cocoon, it was the Phoenix Effect. Bug me.
Yeah, if the death is not set up as the climax of the whole action and everything, if it is simply a plot point through which we're going to tell a different kind of story, I think that can totally work. But yeah, it depends on how the writer has structured or how the show has structured the importance of the death.
Yes, getting back to Wonder Woman 84.
Yes, my favorite fan.
So much Steve dying because Steve has just realized
I've caused a problem.
He doesn't have a right to this body. This is someone else's body, and it's wrong. And he doesn't want to go, but staying would be worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't want him to go because
we love Chris.
But also, if he wanted to stay, it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, and then she would lose her powers.
And yeah, I know, it just gets you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm sorry about everybody out there who's sick of Wonder Woman. Don't come to my parents.
Janelle, I've learned that I'm just dead inside, so.
No, I just have a problem, that's all.
No, there's no such thing as too much fun.
Yeah, me and Taylor, we can talk about it.
But we'll be the last two questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll circle back.
Okay, well, this one is it's not a single character death, but a scene that has a lot of impact for its movie and its entire franchise. Order 66.
Yeah.
And you basically
That was
just
crazy.
watch an entire genocide.
Yeah.
Except it really wasn't a genocide, because it looks like there was dozens of Jedi that survived, but, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
They're violent.
They are.
But watching a whole entire like army move from one side to the other is bonkers.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
like even if I mean, like, even if like 10% of the Jedi survive, that's still a genocide.
Yeah. Anakin took the rest of them.
They did kind of ruin, like, preemptively, the season finale for the new Jedi Youngling series. So,
Two different kinds of deaths that really affected me. One was the deaths of Jakar and London Malari in Babylon 5 that was so anticipated, and yet it killed me. And the other was the death of Josh the pilot in
Too soon. It's still too soon to talk about that death.
Oh, and Zoe. She was, I can't take it.
Yeah.
so we're getting towards the end of the panel. Did I not tell you this was the greatest panel that you're going to see in this room in this hour? So I do want to ask the panel a question before we take off here. We're getting, oh yeah, we're super close. So we talked about death, and that is the subject of the panel, but are there fates worse than death? Two examples come to mind. Donna Noble in Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah.
Getting the power of the Time Lord and having it taken away and not being allowed to remember it. Or Stephen King's short story, The Lawnmower Man, which was kind of a high-tech version of an older novel called Flowers for Algernon. Where, like, reading that book and watching the writing slowly devolve as far as the syntax and grammar, that was almost, that was worse than a death.
Yeah. Similarly, I think separations, because what I've been thinking about all this time, again, it's the Doctor Who reference, is when Rose is trapped in Earth 2, away from the Doctor. It's you know, it was just shocking when it happened the first time, and then I start crying at the beginning of that episode because I know it's coming whenever, and all the rewatches I've done. And it's not a death, but it's still this traumatic event.
But doesn't he send a clone of himself?
Yeah, but it's a human clone. We're not going to get into Doctor Who stuff, no. No.
It's really wobbly and timey-wimey and so.
I feel like fates worse than death are, well, whenever the death might be imminent, but when you are obviously meant to be tortured into death. So like Ilaria Sand in Game of Thrones with her and her daughters being like chained to the walls, have to stare at each other and are gonna watch each other slowly die from whatever different causes that your body does. That kind of stuff, but also I think, so like in Ant-Man when they go to the quantum realm, when Janet goes to the quantum realm, I'm like, I feel like that is worse than death. You're in a fully tiny place you've never seen before, and you are now stuck there to maybe survive or not in a very foreign place that you think you'll never get out of. I think that would be terrifying. Even if you get used to it like she did down there, I still think it would be absurd, and I'd be like, I'd rather be dead.
Again, separated from your loved ones.
Yeah. Anything.
And I want to go back to Babylon 5 for a second. I'm actually going to be talking about Babylon 5 tomorrow as well. But Londo, what happens to Londo before he dies? Where he has what's called a keeper implanted in him. And Londo Mollari, the character in the show, has done horrible things. I mean, he's a very charismatic character, but he's done horrible things. And he has to pay a price, and he knows it, and he accepts it willingly. But he really gets put through the ringer, and we don't really see it. There's a flash forward, we see his death, but he really, really has to pay a heavy price for what he did. And it's effective.
I don't have a good answer for that, but there is one other quick thing I wanted to mention before it's vaguely related to this. I wanted to point out that, to me, the writers, when they introduce a death, especially like in a first episode or something, by the end of that first season, you gotta let me know a little bit more about what's going on there, like who actually died, and I'm talking specifically about Yellow Jackets. We still don't know who that girl is in the pit, and it's been 2 seasons. And I'm very annoyed.
They forgot.
Yeah, exactly, they forgot she was there. I mean, you know, to me, like a death is like the writer makes a promise to you, the storytellers promise you that this is important or not important, they tell you why this is important or not. They then need to respond to that or give you the emotional resolution for that, and when they don't, I feel like that's a failure.
Oh, absolutely. We are down to our very, we're actually at time, but we're gonna close this the right way on like a positive note. So we're gonna really quick, we're gonna go down the dais and then just like any place we can find you, either at Con or find your work outside. And then one of the things that you do, like a little tip for when a death really hits you, how do you cope at home? Whether it's like big bags of marshmallows or little bags of marshmallows, maybe there's no marshmallows involved at all, but whatever it is that helps you kind of get past the ones that really, really stuck to you. And we'll start there.
So yeah, Randee Dawn, you can find me at randeedawn.com. That's Randee with 2 E's, Dawn, DAWN.com. I have some books at FTL Publications in the author's room. And yeah, you can find me. I have one more panel throughout the convention. It's tomorrow. It's the Enola Holmes panel. So come on, let's chat about Enola. And yeah, that's kind of what you need to know about me.
And for me, I'm going to be at the Babylon 5 30th Anniversary Retrospective panel tomorrow at 3:30. And how do I deal with it? Lots and lots of wine.
Oh, I forgot about the ice cream. I'm sorry, for me, the ice cream.
I'm on a couple of panels tomorrow, Manager Stress in the morning, and your new recent favorite reads in the afternoon, or in the evening at 5 o'clock. But next, actually, the next panel, if you liked this conversation, come join us at Did They Actually Like Kids? In which we can talk about the trauma, the rest, along with the never-ending story. What other things traumatized us as kids, and why did they do that to us? And how I deal with it. Well, as we discovered, I'm dead inside, so I just keep reading the story, and the distraction of the continuing story pulls me away from the sadness of the night.
Cool, yeah, I'm Janelle again, and you can find me on I do all socials, every single one of them, whatever you're on, I'm probably on too. Come talk to me, Janelle, Kloth, Kloth. My business cards didn't come in time, it's so frustrating. I have another panel. I did most of mine already, unfortunately, yesterday and today, so if you saw me in those, thank you for coming. But I do have one more on Sunday, Creative Output. It's at 11 a.m. You can come check out that. It's going to be about how you can be creative and put it out there for people, how to market yourself and, be a better brand and a creative person. Other than that, what do I do when things die? First of all, I had to mention one more thing. Aslan Lion, when he died, that took me out, okay? I just wanted to put that out there because I love Narnia. Anyway, I was not about that. Even though he came back, I didn't know at the time. It took me out. Also, I'm on one more panel. It's going to be out in the lobby. It's called Talk About Wonder Woman 1984 and Wonder Woman 1. It is an unofficial panel. You can come find me there, and hopefully I'll be there. No, I'm just kidding. Other than that, you guys, yeah, when it comes to death, I usually cry for a little bit, and then I think about it. I'm a thinker. I go motives. I just think about why, perspectives. I'm so in depth, and then I usually go online and look up theories or I don't know behind the scenes of what they did to make it happen and work, because I love that kind of logistical stuff.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
For being all with us.
Thank you, guys.